Hi, I'm Rushikaa, and this is my IIM Kozhikode interview experience. So, my interview happened in Kozhikode, in the campus. So, I had to fly from Chennai to Kozhikode, and I must say the campus is such a beautiful place. And we had to go to the career development cell, which is where the interview happened on the fourth floor. And first the document verification and everything was done, and then we were allotted our panels to go and attend our interviews. I was in panel number 2, and we had to wait, and we were outside the panel room, and our numbers were called according to the list that they had. So we didn't really have a roll number or an order in which the panelists were called. As and when we went, we were called in an order that only the interviewers knew. So like I went, and the one before me was called after my interview was done. So it was very random, and you always had to be ready to be called for the interview. So about my interview, I had two panelists. One was male and the other one was female. So I'm gonna call the male panelist P1 and the female panelist P2. So I went in and I greeted them, and they asked me how was my journey and how was my day, and I told them I've been having a great day. I asked them back how their day was, and they said they've been having a good day so far. So P1 started the interview, and his first question was, okay, Rushikaa, tell me something about yourself. I gave them the answer that I had prepared. I had mentioned all the hooks that I expected to be questioned about, and my tell me about yourself was done. His first question was, did you sit for placements? And I said, no, sir. I opted for entrepreneurship. So in my college, unlike other colleges, or at least the ones I've heard of, there are three options. We are provided with placement option. We can either choose higher studies or we can choose entrepreneurship. And I had chosen entrepreneurship, for which he smiled and he asked me, shouldn't it be higher studies? Why did you choose entrepreneurship? And I said, sir, higher studies demanded us to be there because we had something called career guidance, where people from abroad universities and people who apply to abroad universities come and tell us how to do and what to do about the SOPs and the admission processes, and that demanded time from me to be there in college for a lot of events and workshops that the college was conducting, and it was compulsory if we had chosen for higher studies. But I knew I wanted to do CAT, and I knew that MBA was my thing, and that I wasn't going abroad, and I wanted to do an MBA and an IIM. So I chose entrepreneurship, and there was no such support of guidance that entrepreneurship required, and so we didn't have to be present there all the time. And so I sat at home, prepared for my CAT in that time, and I gave CAT and got 98.47 percentile was my answer, for which P2 smiled. And then the interview just straightly went to a completely mathematical standpoint. So P1 asked me, write the basic equation, the general equation for quadratic equation. So I was given a notepad and a pen. I wrote ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. And then he asked me, okay, so can a quadratic equation have no solutions? And I answered, yes, sir, a quadratic equation can have no solutions. And he asked, can a quadratic equation have more than two solutions? I said, no, sir, a quadratic equation can't have more than two solutions. And I also told him that there are only three cases. There's either equal solutions, there are two different solutions, or there is no solution. There can't be more than two solutions for a quadratic equation, because the power of the variable is the number of solutions, that the maximum number of solutions that an equation can have. And before I could say the b square minus 4ac greater than, lesser than, or equal to 0 conditions, his other question was, okay, so then draw a graph that shows that a quadratic equation has 0 solutions, for which I drew the axis, and I drew a quadratic equation not touching the x or the y axis, and I told them this is a quadratic equation with no solutions. His next question was, okay, let's say y is equal to x square is a quadratic equation. Draw y is equal to x square plus 2024. So for which I took around half a minute to think, And the meanwhile, he asked me, he was like, why are you thinking so much? Aren't you an engineer? I said, yes, sir. Can I just draw it for you? And then I plotted the graph and I told them it will move up by 2024, which means the y-intercept will be 2024. And then he asked me, okay, then plot the graph of y is equal to x plus 4 the whole square, for which I again plotted the graph and gave them an explanation, and they were fine with it. This was with P1. And then P2 took over, and P2 asked me, okay, Rushikaa, tell me something about the business news, tell me something about what's happening in the business world. I had prepared about the Paytm RBI issue that was happening very vigorously in Feb and the beginning of March, and because my interview was on March 12th, the issue was still kind of in a very discussable state. And so I told them, ma'am, something that the media is talking about a lot is the Paytm RBI issue. And she told me, okay, what is the Paytm RBI issue? What's happening? What's wrong? And then I gave her my prepared answer of how, UPI and GPay and all, they have, so there's our user ID, and then there is at OKSBI or OKICICI or OKAxis, and Paytm has the same, but it says at OKPaytm or at Paytm, which basically means that while you're becoming a member of a Paytm, what you're doing is you are opening a savings account in your name, and Paytm is opening a savings account in your name in something that works like a bank for Paytm. And the major issue that RBI had was that the KYC, as in it was not abrupt on the face of the customers that there was a savings account as such open, because most of the customers and the merchants that were using Paytm were unaware of the fact that it was operating sort of like a bank and it was not operating like UPI. That was the first. I gave them a more elaborate explanation, and I think they were okay with it because I had done my fact check and I had read a few articles, I had done my research about it, so I was sure of what I was speaking about. And then P2 went to ask me if something that is mentioned in the regulations is not read by the customer, how is Paytm answerable to it? Why aren't the customers penalized for it? Why is the RBI having a problem with Paytm? And so I told them that, ma'am, because the customers are unaware of such a thing happening, Paytm, which is not a government agency, it's a private agency, it's become a monopoly. It's sort of becoming a monopoly because so much of customer information is available with Paytm, and one of Paytm's investor is a Chinese investor, and so the Indian government is having a questionable threat that there may be leak of information of its citizens to the Chinese government. And so that was sort of the conversation about Paytm and RBI, and then she asked me, can you tell me how big is this, what is the scale, how big of a problem is this? And I told her, ma'am, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but I'm sure it's in a few multiple lakhs, because one person one account was not how it is. It is one person many account, because a person can have multiple numbers, and each number acts as a separate account, and a person can have n number of companies and agencies, and all of them can be a part of Paytm. So I told her that it was a multitude problem, and it was not one person one account, and it was one person multiple accounts. And so what the RBI had told Paytm to do is to make sure that its merchants or its people associate the account with any bank that they could find, and that HDFC, ICICI and Axis Bank have come forward to provide support for Paytm. That was about the Paytm RBI issue, and that was the major one that happened. The other question that P2 asked me was, what is Nifty, what is Sensex? Me being from a civil engineering background, I didn't know the exact intricate details about what, how, what, where of Nifty and Sensex, but I kind of knew the definition of it. I told them the definition and they were fine with it. And then P1 asked me a question of why isn't your company in the stock market yet? Why haven't you listed your company? And I told him, sir, because my company is a sole proprietorship, it's not a public limited company, and it is not a partnership also yet. And so, right now, we have no intention of listing it on the stock market yet. And then he asked me, okay, so then tell me what is the difference between a public limited company and a private limited company, for which I answered him. I told him that a public limited company is basically when the stock of a company is listed in the share market, and the public also hold a part of its shares, and the company in its profits or losses are also answerable to the citizens and the customers who hold the share. But in a private limited company, it's only, amongst the stakeholders and the shareholders that are a part of the company, and it's not common citizens who hold parts of it, for which he was convinced. And between all this, I had a very interesting question that came up. So P1 asked me, why do you want to do an MBA? Why can't you just, take care of your company? And why do you not want to do an MBA later? Why do you want to do it now? For which I told them, sir, 5 or 6 years down the lane, my company, I feel, would be in a much more vulnerable state to leave it and come and do anything like an MBA, an EMBA, an executive MBA. And I feel like I will be in a position where I can't give other people the responsibilities that I am doing at that point. And I also told them that right now, since it's a sole proprietorship, I'm only answerable to myself. But 5 or 6 years down the lane, I'll be answerable to my investors also, apart from my clients. And I can't go and tell them that, I need a break off because I want to do an MBA, even if an MBA is something that I really want to do. So I feel like doing an MBA right now is an investment I make for myself and my company. All this said and done, the interview went pretty smoothly. It went pretty well. I was actually informed, and I read a lot about how Kozhikode interviews can take a wild turn, and how it's very common for it to be a stress interview. But surprisingly, the interview was very, very chill for me. It went very smoothly. I was put with questions that I was well prepared with. It was more general questions. It was more a conversation than an interview of someone asking me a question and me answering it. And towards the end, because there was absolutely no civil questions asked, I told them something that I had noticed on my way to the interview place. So basically, for those who've been to IIM Kozhikode, the college is set on 2 small hills, right? So the epitome of one hill is the academic block, and the epitome of the other is the residential block. And right when you enter the main gate, to your right side, there's something like a pond or a lake that's there. And it also serves a very aesthetic purpose, and there's a football ground near it, and there's a gallery, there's a viewing place, and all of that is there. But from a civil engineering standpoint, because Kozhikode is basically on hills, there are a lot of different slope detention techniques that have been followed throughout the camp. I told them how very intelligently the lake and the pond that most people think solves an aesthetic purpose is actually a rainwater harvesting pit that was placed there to use the natural slopey terrain of the campus in such a way that no matter where rain falls, it will come to the valley point, and the valley point is where the rainwater harvesting place is situated. My interview ended with oh, that's good. How was my interview? I would consider Kozhikode to be my best interview, which I am aware does not guarantee me an admission into the college, but I am extremely satisfied with how my interview went and how I answered the questions that were put forth with me. I feel like because Kozhikode was my last interview, I was very calm before the interview, and I didn't have the performance pressure of Kozhikode and I need to do my best. I think once I walked in, just the place and the energy made me so calm, and it made me think and come with answers to questions that even I was not very sure of, and I could give them a very conversational vibe more than an interview vibe. So that's how my interview went. I would consider this interview a 4.5 or a 4 if I had to be more modest, on 5 stars. So that's how good my interview went. Irrespective if I make it or not, I feel like I did my best in my interview, and I'm extremely happy at how my interview went. Yeah, that's about my Kozhikode experience. Cheers.